we want to, before we get started and as we get started and when we end, we want to give our thanks and gratitude to the American Student Assistants and Jean Eddy as CEO for really believing in this project and helping to provide the foundation funding for this. I know we've got Julie Lamers on, and I think that's Kevin Fudge's phone number because he likes to use the phone in these, and that number looks quite familiar. So Kevin, I'm assuming that's you on there. And they've been a really, really powerful advocates in supporting this from ASA. And then we also have Castle that's also on board. So we have, we'll go through the names in a minute, but we've got Matt Atwell on today from some work we're doing that we'll talk about as well. But Robin, why don't we get started? You've got a fun activity. So we're gonna test Jan's technical skills here and Leo's. We know we can do it. Let's take a deep breath. We can do it together.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Kroyer-Kubicek. I'm working with Scott right now to help him with the scientific community, and my gratitude also to ASA for providing funding for this work. He pulled me out of retirement, so I call it semi-retirement now. My husband no longer calls it my charity work. So in order to make this, of course, now it's taking time. In order to make this kind of interactive and fun, if you participated with us at the convening in December, we're going to kind of do something similar. So we have a cute couple slides that we want to try and make interactive. The thing to do is you have to either use your phone or log into another window to this Poll Everywhere site with my name in order to access the interactive slides.
Can you put that link in the chat?
Oh, sure. You're going to make me do it as I'm sitting here.
I can't find it.
I can't do it. You got to do it for me, Scott.
Oh, I can do it.
This is how we interact on these things.
I got it. I got you covered.
All right.
I got you covered.
Again, it's just a kind of a fun way so that everybody who's listening today can pop in a link or pop in a comment. Don't worry, it's all anonymous. You need to do it in this new window though. So keep that new window open because we have a couple of these throughout the presentation. Okay. So I want to give you a second to click on that Poll Everywhere. And again, remember, keep it minimized or open on your phone or whatever you're using. Should we try to the next one, Scott?
Try the next one, what? Okay, I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to get in here.
Oh, you're trying to get in. Well, we'll see if people are faster than you because first question is just, oh, see, there's somebody from Wisconsin who's already faster than you, Scott. Colorado. So you can see where people are zooming from. This is a fun image. If you use Google Slides, it's called Poll Everywhere. It interacts right into the slideshow. So we kind of think this is a little bit fun. If you're from Canada or somewhere else, just kind of pop yourself outside the image of the US. We do have some Canadian folks who do participate in our monthly network. So this is really fun. Ooh, somebody way up in Maine, down in Florida. Oh, yay, Arizona there. So keep it open for a few more minutes. Oh, yeah, Julia in Alaska. We got Julia. Love seeing her.
Wisconsin is in the house. And so
look at Colorado, too.
Wow.
See, I handle it. It's technology, and I handled it. See,
you did it. Fantastic.
Right. So we have your seal of approval.
This is great.
Amazing. Oh, thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. Yeah, choosing Chrome does help.
A little bit going on in Florida. That's great.
Yeah.
We got some there.
Got another one. So ready for the next one?
Yep.
All right, here we go. So now we know where you're zooming in from. Now just click on or select A, B, C, D, E, or F for who you represent. So if you're from an employer, a business industry, workforce development, higher ed. So Brian Albrecht, you're clicking that B. If Karen's still on, she's clicking K-12 for my state. And I know Amy, you're supposed to be clicking workforce development.
Oh no, we're getting some none of the above that's giving us an F. So those none of the above, so get in the chat and tell us how we missed you, what you're representing. That would be great.
I wonder if they're national. Well, if you're a national organization or foundation, that would be E. So
government. Shelley,
government. How could I forget government?
I'm telling you, Robin, we got to work on this.
I know. No. I'm a work in progress. I'm on my sixth career pathway.
All right. Well, that's good.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yep. And Sarah's saying covering two areas, so it's hard to find one. So that's great.
That's
all right,
true.
Let's go. Next slide.
All righty. There you go, Scott. I'm going to let you do this introduction.
So you're going to be here. We're going to show you the scope of the people that we brought together. When we first started and had a chat with our state leaders back in December, we were just at the idea phase, and now we have a structure in place. The goal, for the primary goal of our work, is going to create an annual condition of career readiness report. But our mission, if you will, is to identify, especially among all the great organizations that are working with us, what are the promising practices that need to be thought about so we don't have to reinvent any wheels. So we want to call out, study, and communicate out some of the great work that's going on around our country in relation to career development and workforce development and all of the different things that go with that. So that's who we are and kind of how we're positioning ourselves as we work. And then Robin?
Alrighty, well, again, I'm helping with Scott to do some of this work and helping coordinate both with the research projects that we're going to start and describe in a little bit, and with the State Leaders of Career Development Network. So we're really hoping to grow that and reach deeper into all of the states to ensure that they know that they have a place to discuss these issues where they may feel like they've been on their own.
All right. So our committee members, and we have some of them with us today. I saw Sheila on today. I think Kevin is in there on the phone. Orrin White, you got to hear from today earlier. He's part of our crew. An amazing group that cover a number of different areas that are just helping us think through reviewing the kinds of our outline and kind of scope of work that we're trying to do. And so really excited to have them on board. And that group will continue to grow. We're collecting a few others as we move along.
And then the next slide talks about our staff.
All right, so there you are. Robin, why don't you walk a little bit through that, and then I'll finish
Scott,
off.
of course, is our Vice President of Research, and I now have this fantastic title, Director of Research Initiatives. Feel very honored to have the title, really just helping to coordinate this work. And we do want to recognize the folks that are starting to undergo the research that's starting to occur, which is Rhonda Basha, which a lot of folks know from Department of Labor, is working with us. And then Hae-Young Kim, are you on, Hae-Young?
She is.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
I don't know if you want to share your video and do a little wave.
Yeah, so she's Hae-Young is a doctoral student at Boston University and is an incredible quantitative analyst. And so we're so excited she's going to help with some of the heavy lifting on our data. So great.
And then we have some folks we pulled back in to help with some of the other research, which is Greg Curtis, originally from Wisconsin, Kay Schreiber from Arizona, and then Sheila Arredondo, which many of you might know from West Ed. And working with us on from Castle, who's also been a tremendous support of this work, is Dana, Linda, and Roger, and then Matt Atwell supporting their work too, and of course, Kevin Punch.
Yeah, all right.
All righty, so this is my slide where I get to tell you a little bit about the State Leaders Network, if you haven't already heard about it. In the description for today's particular session, we talked about how learning about ILPs, individualized learning plans, personal career plans across the US for best practices and innovations and collaborations. And we have really been doing this since, and I'm not even sure, Scott, did I get the right year? Is it 2014 or 2015?
I think so. Yeah, it's out there somewhere. I don't like
that. Yeah, he started this as really a grassroots effort to bring states together to help have a conversation about these things as these policy implementations were going in, these policy statutes and laws were passing to have ILPs. Well, how do you do that? What does that look like? What are some best practices? How do you roll it out? And it's been fantastic. And we've grown to a group of almost more than 30 states with national organizations such as Castle involved. We meet monthly and we do, I like how you described it one time, Scott. It's like a coffee chat. We come together, we share practices, we want to talk about innovations. It's not sit and get. We may do short presentations, but then when we really talk to each other, and I know from the past, being part of this since the beginning, we've also contacted other states on our own to help with support for what we're doing or ask questions or how did you overcome this issue? So it's been a fantastic networking resource, and we do have a link here, and some of our past meetings have talked about things like recently we've had sessions on LinkedIn and Microsoft, Grow with Google for industry certifications and how states are doing some quality evaluations, especially with their new quality industry guidelines that came out. So talking about how those are working. We've had international presentations, such as a group from Romania that Scott knows, that presented what they're doing with SEL, social emotional learning. And then, of course, a large chunk of what we talk about is what's going on in states for IOP standards, implementations, and again, best practices. And anything else you wanted to add, Scott?
No, I wanted another shout out. We have a number of our state leaders that are on here today, and really appreciate working with you all and the great feedback we get. And also, I want to just give a shout out to the coalition board. So many of you have been kind of coming to some of these sessions and meetings, and it means a lot to have your involvement with this. So really, really thank you for that as well. It's a really, really exciting resource for us all.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do next is just talk about the agenda for the research that under the coalition. And again, like Scott said in the beginning, our two tasks were to create this annual condition of career readiness report, which we're starting to work on now, that will be released next spring. And then really to study and identify pieces of the impact on career readiness. And I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're going to go through, I think we have some slides on the elements of the report, correct?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So so basically what we want to do is maintain the evidence base so that behind everything, and we had a great panel this morning, hearing from Kimberly Green and Amanda, and I forgot who else was on. We had, and Lauren, about really key issues. And underneath that is a lot of evidence base to support it. And that's where we see our role, is making sure that we can support that evidence base and talk about it in a way that we can feel strong that we are on the right track. And so so the condition of career readiness report, we meaning really Robin, has put together a fantastic model of data to really answer issues about equity, answer issues about how the personalized career plans, how the career and technical education as the primary drivers are facilitating career readiness, and looking at it at the national level so we can see how states might be doing around that topic. And with Ha-Young Kim helping us, we really want to see what critical elements are going on that may be better drivers or more effective drivers. We know, for example, Colorado's invested tremendously in bringing down the ratio of counselors to students. And they've been using those new counselors to engage in the personalized career and academic plans. And they have billions of dollars that they've estimated in revenue that's come from that. So we want to highlight those kinds of things and see how well those are serving as levers as we see some of this. So what we are not doing is collecting data. What we are doing is gathering data that's been already collected. And they've been collected in different pockets from different organizations, from our federal government to the American School Counseling Association, Advanced CT, all of these things. And then what we're doing is synthesizing that into data that we can then analyze to say what seems to be most predictive of something, and bring in some best practices to think about what can we do next. How can we support states in thinking about how they can more effectively manage as well as measure this thing called career readiness. So this is our first one. We will plan to have it. I think we have timing. Do we have a timeline in the next slide? We can get to that in a second. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll talk about that in a second. But so that's the big thing. We are also working on these different 5 pillars around the work that we're organized around, right? In our white paper. So we'll be looking at research that's going on in some of these areas, trying to find. I know Leo, as anyone who's been on some of these meetings knows, Leo really wants to look at those certified career counselors and make sure that they're value added. And so we're working on some proposals to fund on that. You heard Oren and Alex representing Sociedad Latina, some really great work about what happens when a community-based organization gets involved with schools. And then Oren in Delaware is one of our next case studies, what they're doing in Delaware, in Kansas and in Wisconsin are some really powerful models that we want to get inside and look at and analyze and then report out. So we'll be focusing a lot on what's happening in those 3 states in our first report, and that helps us understand a lot of these additional pillars. So we'll keep going on that. And then we got to move because we need to get to the dialogue conversation.
Absolutely. So
right.
yeah, just, the idea that there's a lot of research going on, and it will
continue to inform our work. Yeah. You got the next one? Is it working?
Not yet. There we go. So
okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know, we've had the convening. There's a lot of research, a lot to do. We did come out with a draft model to help direct some of the things we want to do. We have a scientific committee that's helping us annually to review what we've looked at, including data indicators, some of those outcomes that you guys have been talking about throughout these last 2 days. And we've decided to organize our first report under 3 strands, which Scott just mentioned. A case study about social emotional learning and career workforce readiness, data indicators that we're collecting and pulling from all sorts of different sources. And then of course, updating the scan of what is out there for ILP, PCPs, personal career plans, current legislation, and what's being mandated, so on. So we're underway with this, and we have some upcoming work happening in this summer. We're going to be starting underway with the really hard data collection, data tables, case studies, the roll up your sleeves kind of stuff. We'll be working with states and summarizing the data that we collected to find out some more of that. And then of course, publishing our first career readiness report. And like Scott, I'm just flipping through these couple slides because I want to get to the chatting part. So if you've never used Jamboard, it's really a fun tool, and Scott's going to put the link into the chat box.
Yeah, as soon as I find it, here it is.
Now I sent it to you. It's in the chat.
I got it.
So Jamboard was a fun thing that I discovered at Advanced CT in their recent spring meeting. Thank you, Advanced CT. I had a lot of fun with it, but I didn't know how to use it exactly. So as you open Jamboard on that link, on the left nav bar is a thing that looks like a little Post-it note. That's what you click on to fill in your comments, like seriously, a Post-it note. So those of us in education used to do gallery walks and such. That's kind of similar to what you're doing. On the top nav bar, you'll see where it says, looks like arrows with pages. So the first 2 pages are going to be one question, and the second 2 pages are another question, but that's how you get to the different questions. So let's take a look at the open discussion questions. So hopefully you've now clicked on Jamboard, and you'll see the 3 rows. Remember, page 1 and board 1 and board 2 are the first question, and board 3 and board 4 are the second question. And I'm going to let Scott talk about what's the discussion we want to have now with these questions.
Yeah, so this is the thought. We want to have you come off mute at times and talk about some of these. So use the chat box as well. But the Jamboard will give us a chance to really see each other, writing it up. And what you'll see when you get to the Jamboard, in the middle, there's a little tiny sticky. If you go around the little toggle things, there's a thing that says sticky note, and that's what you can click on to write out your idea. But our thought is, from the position you're sitting in, is in some kind of organization of some kind. And you've got people around you that when you get done with this conference, you got to go back and explain what this all means. The question we have for you to really think about is, how can we help you with a report like this? What are the data points? What are the ways we communicate this, for dissemination? What can we do to help you make the case for the value of what we're doing? And by value of what we're doing, we're talking about personalized career plans. We're talking about access to work-based learning. We've heard today all about equity. How are we all being ready to deal with these really important conversations and finding the courage to really think about how we're creating a workforce or a work setting that's fully inclusive and fully helping everyone feel they belong? How are we if it's linking from the high school to the higher ed, if it's into getting access to certifications, whatever that role is you're in, what is it what do you feel would be most important in helping you make the case for the value of engaging in that work? Okay, so that's the idea. And we thought if you could do that, we can, we've got we're trying out this Jamboard thing and seeing how it works. but we want to see you kind of throw down the thoughts and ideas, and then we're going to have a conversation based on what happens, what your thoughts are. So Brian Albrecht, what are you thinking? You can talk out loud with this too, but how are you doing? You got on the Jamboard? You look like you're looking at the Jamboard saying, is this written in Greek? You have to come off mute though.
Here. All right, I'm
There you
back
are.
with you.
Yeah.
So I did a sticky note, works good. I like the system.
All right. Okay.
One of the things that, yeah, one of the things that I mentioned on my sticky note was reflecting on the employer panel yesterday, was the idea that if we can connect the importance of the shortage of workers to the need for career planning so that people can make informed decisions going forward. So we can make that bridge connection. I think that'll resonate, especially right now with the economy the way it is.
Fantastic. And so I think, Robin, the way I'm interpreting that, and others can jump in on it, is we need to be defining career readiness in a way that how are we helping young adults, youth, and adults understand the skills they need and help them find the pathways to develop those skills so that they're ready in their local and regional opportunities. All right, great. We got lots coming in. I'm calling Brian out because
great way to,
yeah.
if you're kind of shy and you don't feel like jumping in. I love using this Post-it note thing because there's some days I'm just not camera ready and I don't feel like talking. I was just saying, I know I have some of our state leaders on who are not shy. So please feel free to jump out and tell us some of the things you're thinking.
And I like this, showing career development leads to post-secondary success. I think that is one of the things that we will be focusing a lot on, and I'll call out our colleagues in Kansas, and I think Natalie's on today. And the area there is that they're looking at adding in having a credential as I graduate from high school as one of their career readiness indicators, along with post-secondary getting in and continuing. And that helps us see sort of the outcome, if you will, that's really exciting. But then becomes the important question of how do we measure the work we're doing with the personalized career plans, with the access to work-based learning, with the early college and certifications on, how do we link that up to the kinds of success we're seeing at the post-secondary? And so we will be looking for models and examples, but also whether we find them or not, we hope to provide some ideas and recommendations about how we might do that. So, and if there's anyone who wants to make a comment on what we just said, this is now you're entering our state leaders network. Thank you, Julie. You just raise your hand and get ready to go because we want this to be a conversation.
I love that.
Julie,
thank you. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it makes the board a little bit complicated. One of the thoughts that I had is just because we've been doing a lot of work recently on work-based learning and did a sort of a nationwide scan of what policies were. And what we have found as we're rolling that out is people are really looking for a couple of things. Best practices. They don't want to just highlight the problems. So make sure that we're providing actual actionable solutions. But also they in a competitive nature, they want to know sort of who's ahead of them and who's doing things really, really well. So, I think people want to be able to talk about their successes, but also really point to where others are doing things well and how do you replicate that?
Thank you, Joy. That's exactly right on target. That's sort of what we plan to do. We are not going to call out states and say, look how awful you are. We are not going to do that at all. What we want to do is focus on the positive and focus on, like you said, Julie, here's a really exciting practice that someone's doing. And it's unique enough to say it's moving us all forward in terms of our imagination. Julia, Robin and I had bets on how long it would take before we saw your hand up, and I think I won, so we're in good shape. Julia from Alaska has been on these meetings when we start at whatever time. She is there, and just a great trooper. So did I lose you, Julia? Where did you go?
No, I should still be here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, there you are.
Yeah, well,
So
also,
Go ahead.
Also, including all special populations and what we're working in, and the fact that we don't always know when we have somebody in a special population in our groups or in our areas. So making sure that whatever materials, whatever work we're doing, that we are representing all areas so that if they're real shy or quiet, that they're getting their piece out there. And I don't tend to be the shy and quiet person.
No, and I want to appreciate Shauna earlier sending me some direct messages reminding us that, you know, and I've talked to Jan already about this. When we go forward, we will definitely be adding more around our disability space to make sure that we are focused on that full inclusion and thinking about how to help employers really design and set up their workplaces to be fully inclusive. So we definitely, thank you, want to keep that front and center. Natalie from Kansas.
Yes, Dr. Solberg, it's coincidence, but my sticky note was career development leading to an increase in post-secondary success.
See, and then I called Kansas out as being on the line for that. That's great.
So our governor has an executive order setting up an Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council. So our Governor's Education Council has recommended market value assets or Diploma Plus prior to graduation. So we are looking at what are those high quality work-based learning experiences, those IRCs, and those college credits prior to graduation, and thinking about regionally, what might that look like in different regions? So yes, it's very much something we're looking at.
And Natalie, just awesome the amount of momentum you have right now going on in your state. And a lot of it's because of the great work you've done and Stacy has done. And we will be highlighting that work in our report. We're going to hope to highlight and get people pointing out that you have built some incredible resources. And I know you threw a bunch down yesterday in our meeting, but really just so excited to learn from Kansas. Fantastic. Fantastic.
And I'd like to call out some of the NSFY states, the New Skills for Youth states, who worked under Advanced CTE and CCSSO, which is the Council of Chief State School Officers, because that really brought attention to this package of career readiness through quality career advising through like an ILP process with industry certifications, work-based learning, dual college credit, and CTE pathways, and how that package really shows so much promise for just increasing student navigation and career development. So I know we have a few of those states on too. Feel free to jump off on that as well. And again, shout out to Kimberly Green from Advanced CTE. That was such a phenomenal experience to be part of, was that grant. Yeah.
So one of the comments I'm looking at, helping teachers and administrators understand it's not everyone's job. It's not just school counselors, or it's everyone's job. It's not just school counselors. If someone want to come off and talk about how they're doing that, I know there's a number of states, certainly Wisconsin's one of them, that have been able to be successful in making that case. So just kind of how you've done that, because we've heard that theme come up earlier today in some earlier panelists. And we've heard it in a number of panels, right? That one person's job and everyone steps away. So how is that getting done? I got Julie and Natalie, you both have your hand raised, but I think that was from before. But if someone wants to raise their hand and come off mute, that would be great.
Now, you know, I'm scrolling to see if I can call on anyone now.
I know it. Who do we have?
We have lots of people. Let's see here. Oh, come on, Robin. Robin Russell from Colorado. I know you can add some really great discussion to this.
Absolutely. All right, Robin.
Okay,
calling you out.
Am I showing up?
I don't know. I was going down the list.
Can you see me?
Yep.
Yes.
We got you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. In Colorado, there's a couple things that we did. First, we rolled it out badly and dumped ILP and what we call ICAP on the desks of counselors. But over time, we have spread the message that it is a team of people, that ICAP begins with counselors, folks from special ed, CTE folks, and administrators. And if that group gets together to decide what ICAP looks like locally, then that is a way to really involve all sorts of people. And of course, teachers, everybody else. So that's one thing that's going on, is the way that we promote ICAP. The other is that we have a pretty big focus on
Robin.
teachers. Yeah.
Robin, your voice is kind of going in and out. We're kind of.
Yeah, it's because I don't have my microphone. I'm sorry. Can you hear me better now? I'll lean forward.
I think so. You'll lean forward. Okay, yeah, put your face right on the screen. That'll work.
All right.
There you go. Or we'll try that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go get my microphone. But essentially, the idea is that teachers in every classroom, or any adult in a student's life, can have a meaningful career conversation with a student. And that really makes a difference all the way through. So
and we heard Jill Cook talk about how ASCA, the American School Council Associations, adopted the work that Colorado started and added that in as well. So really fantastic, really great. And as Julia Renfro says, that caring, encouraging adult being such a key component to that is being huge. Sean is on. John, you want to come off and talk about that? I think this is one of the key issues around when we think about personalized career and academic plans. It's a team sport, and the 3 team leads, right? School counseling, career and technical education, and our special education. And they're not to do it. They're the lead designers, along with those other educators, bringing in Orrin White from the United Way, bringing in the employers and such to make that happen. John, are you able to come off?
Yeah, I just had to find the right buttons.
Okay, yeah. So you're right on target, right? I mean, we have to think about the value that each of these perspectives bring to the table.
Absolutely. So I'm a transition coordinator. I'm coming from the special ed world, and I'm really trying to bring all of these people to the table. And this is really fascinating for me to hear that this is how it is being done. It kind of reaffirms that, yes, we all have these unique perspectives that can come together to make a really powerful team. And it's reaffirming that I need to continue to work on this collaboration of all of these different groups, because CTE has the career experience, special ed has the transition focus. That's what we do at the high school level, is that transition piece. And counselors kind of have the academic piece of it. And so if we bring all those 3 things together, you kind of have the base recipe for what could be a really powerful combination of things. But I agree, Karen's comment, how do you get them to do that? That is the hard part. That's where I'm struggling.
Well, all right. So let's give you some answers to that. All right. So this is how we've been trying to do this. The first is you create a professional learning community. And so Karen, when you're going to be moving in Delaware to bring the United Way in, plus the schools, when we think about doing professional development, we want them to start as a team. So we're not doing the professional development to school counselors. We're doing it to a team that has those pieces, and then we add in the community-based organization. So now we have a co-designing piece that's going on. That's step 1. Step 2, what we found is having them just sit and design isn't enough, because they still don't get it. They revert back to old practice. So what we're starting to do now and experimenting with is having them do some exciting activities, do some of these personalized career activities, so they can get a sense that it is very different. And at the end of the day, the key is, if it doesn't help my classroom work better, then as a teacher, I can't get invested in it. But what we're finding is, once they do start doing it, the classroom does improve. They find out that they do build stronger relationships, that the youth are now driving the process. So it's a matter of helping to get the adoption started with this community, and then we allow them to have these experiences. And we're seeing it right now happen in Boston. We've just done this, and they're getting connected, and these teachers are, most of them, not all, because we know anytime you do an innovation, not everyone's going to get bought in right away. But for the ones who have, they've had some really powerful conversations with you. Now, teachers are not specialists in career development, and as Karen points out, how are they supposed to know everything that's going on? And my one challenge back to our early panel with our advanced CTE crew and such is, no one knows. It's not about helping counselors become better knowing the world of work and all the things going on. We have career information systems. You heard Ron Painter talk about ONET and its value, but you're all using online systems, and it's in those online systems that all that information is available. What we have to do is help educators say 2 important words, right? We get a lesson, and the lesson says, go out and find this great stuff about this really cool career that you're interested in, find this information. That's the lesson. What is it that the teacher does? They say two phrases. First, wow, that's really exciting. And the second is, what more can you tell me? In other words, get back to exploring. So all we're doing as educators is facilitating the students in finding out the information, learning about it, and coming back and reporting it. And then we have a student-led parent-teacher conference where we find out exactly what they've learned. And now we're starting to use all kinds of things, Flipgrids and PowerPoint presentations and video recordings for them to showcase what they've learned through this experience. So it becomes a student-driven piece. So, oh, and we've got student support personnel absolutely are critical to this. So thank you. We don't want to lose that. But this is the kind of the recipe is building the capacity of our organizations to experience what it's like when youth become inspired and when they start driving their own pathway. And so I'll give you some examples. I'll give you one quick one. And then Robin, you look for the next one. We got so many things on here. I've got so many stuff on here, but figure out the next one we'll go to. But let me give you one story. I've got many, but here's one. So we'll go to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, because great things happen in Sheboygan.
Oh, you take mine.
It's just a fun word to say. But at any rate, so in Sheboygan, I'll take it, is this young woman who's Latinx, first generation, low income family. So all the different things we've talked about when we talk about equity, and was just doing nothing in school. Was at the bottom third, not really showing up in terms of showing up to class, but was not really performing and engaged. And then they had this experience with this thing called a health pathway, right? The health career pathway. And all of a sudden they went, wow, that hospital thing looks kind of cool. And so going to the online system, which they had available, because during the first 2 years of high school, they were learning how to do all this stuff. This individual goes in, they find out that there's all these cool certifications available, one of which was dietitian aid. So they went to their college between their sophomore and junior year, they got a dietitian aid certificate, start working in the hospital, realize there's a lot of cool things going on in the hospital. How do I continue in a pathway to be working in the hospital? Oh, I've got to do what? I got to take math. I got to take science. So they come back in fall, ready to take all the advanced courses in math and science, then continued on to the college and got 10 college credits and graduated, not at the top of the class, not even probably right in the middle of the class. But that statement of purpose of who they are and what they want to do with their lives was so strong. And this is what we're seeing repeated all over the country. It was so strong, they were given a full scholarship to go into a nursing program. So this is transformative. I mean, this is helping facilitate. So as educators, we're not the experts. As employers, the expertise we want there, and you heard it earlier with Orrin White's, that quote, we want employers to just believe in the power of our youth and to really support them in thinking and seriously considering the kinds of opportunities that are there. But we don't need them to be experts in the career development. We just need them to be experts in human skills to help our youth feel inspired and feel that they belong somewhere. So this is the process we're looking at, and we're using the online systems as the technical assistance, but we're looking for human skills from our counselors, our teachers, our parents, and the whole community, our community organizations, to really make this happen. So I'll stop talking, otherwise I'll just keep going, and
somebody else have a comment or something they'd want to share? Because again, we know that nobody has it all figured out. And that's what this report is meant to do, is to support you at a state level, regional level, local level, to provide the ammunition you need to say, this is important, we need to invest in this. How do we get you on board to do more of this? Is there other stories that, you may not have work-based learning figured out, but boy, you've got this ILP thing going on really well, or vice versa. Maybe you have a great work-based learning program and you're just trying to connect it to the other pieces. Love to hear it.
Well, and I want to, I want someone to raise their hand so they can come off and chat with us. And while we're waiting for that hand, Natalie, are you raising your hand to talk again, or you just have your hand stuck up there? What's going on there?
No, it must just be stuck. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll lower it.
That's all right. I just want to make sure. I don't want to lose you, because I know you've got amazing things to say too. So there's a great one down here. It's a little tiny green post-it that says, help us develop metrics at the local level to determine the impact of this. The story I just gave you, there's your impact, right? So when we're trying to do something new and something innovative, it's the stories, and we want to give an opportunity for the stories. So you know what? Last night when we had the we had the training for all of these educators that are working with middle school youth that are using we call it MyCap in Massachusetts, My Career and Academic Plan. So they've been doing the lessons, and they put up these post-its to say, how's the experience going, right? And we were able to hear them tell their stories, tell the things going on. We've had opportunities for students to record themselves. Hey, what was this like for you? What happened? Those are the testimonials that we want to start with. We want to start with, how are you experiencing what's happening? Because the numerical data of getting to better grades and all that, we've seen the data, it'll happen. But that's not enough to help us feel inspired. So we want to collect these. And so in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, Adriana Plack did an amazing job of just having focus groups with the students, with the parents, with the teachers to say, how did it go? How did this process work? And on the basis of that, they were able to make the case for having more time in doing the personalized career plans. And it was clear everyone was getting into it. They used it. They decided to advance their advisory in a stronger way. In Milwaukee, this amazing Natalie, this amazing school counselor, who, by the way, I did train initially. Not that I gave her skills; she's amazing on her own. But anyway, I'm just glad to be connected with her. And Adriana, I actually did her as well. Right when I was out as a professor. But what she did in Milwaukee was the same thing. And you know what? Not all the schools were bought in. Not all the schools were doing it. But in the 2 schools that she got the stories from, the superintendent felt so impassioned by it that it was mandated for the whole district. We're going all in and we're doing more and we're going to make this happen. So we have to show the potentiality, right, to begin with. And we have to really be willing to say it's not about whether it's implemented everywhere perfectly. It's a matter of where are we seeing the sparks, and then how do we communicate those sparks so others can hear about it and see the potential of what can happen. So that's what I want to say to the local level. At the state level, we've got to roll up the data, and we've got great ways. If anyone, I can't read all the things in there, but if people were saying, how do I sell the value? We have a really nice one that we built for Massachusetts that builds the case. Wisconsin has a beautiful statement on what they did and spend a lot of money on communication. And we have that. Saw a fabulous report from Kansas. So you do have state model. Colorado. I know I've got people who are going to write me angry letters because I'm forgetting the states that are doing great work in this. But there's just a lot of great work going on. So you don't have to invent that language or that conversation. There's people who've done it for you, and you want to emulate that. And then at the national level,
I want to call on Brian Albrecht to come off. Yeah. And the reason I'm calling on him is Brian works with the schools to tell these stories, and he's just a master of communication in the region, including, Brian, don't you still do a podcast on radio out of Racine, if I remember? It's taking very hard work to bring groups together to identify what you need to do and where the work is and prioritize it. But it's also, again, like you said, the advocacy piece. And Brian, I hope you're still on and you're going to come off and talk a little bit about that, because I think you do such a tremendous job at all levels with the employers, the schools, the students, and the higher ed kids, adults, to make that happen and continue to bring that story and keep it at the forefront.
Well, thank you, Robin. Yeah, and I'm still on for sure, because this is an important and engaging conversation. And it's one that I think is something that never really ends. And I always try to remind myself that every time I talk to a new group of parents, it's the first time they've heard it. So there's always a new group of parents out there that need to communicate with. And that would be the same with students, or in many cases with teachers that had not been exposed to some of the opportunities that are available under the concept of pathways. And, at Gateway, we're very fortunate. We serve close to 6,000 students through dual credit. So we have a really strong network of support from the college environment into the K-12 environment. And there's just a relationship to help provide resources that are going to build that pathway knowledge base for students, for teachers, for counselors, and of course for parents. But it took a long time to get to that stage, and it takes a capital investment. We had to hire new people. We had to think differently about the way that we invest in credit transfer and in the big scheme of things, to tell that story to our community that we save approximately $3 million of tuition costs for parents in our community. Then they can recognize that their tax investment, whether it's at the K-12 or the post-secondary level, is returning a greater value than it might be if each organization worked independently. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of the work of the CCD and this idea of how do we strengthen the development of career awareness at all levels. And I'm always reminded what Nick Pinchuk tells us to do, CEO of Snap-on, and that when you have the pulpit, you've got to tell the story, right? So if you are in a position of some level of responsibility, people will pay attention and they will listen. So as the college president, I'm able to get in front of groups that maybe others aren't able to. So I can talk about the importance of our investment and what the opportunities would lead to for young people and adults in our community. In fact, on one of the sticky sheets, I said, let's keep reminding ourselves that career development is not a process that ends at grade 12. It is a
lifelong.
It is a thought in lifelong learning, right? We are reinventing ourselves all the time. And, you know, with millions of job openings, there's going to be a lot of people that are 30 and 40 years old that are going to start thinking about how do I reinvent myself for a new pathway. So I think, there's just a lot of work to be done, but a lot of good examples too. And you're drawing that out from other states. That's what this work is all about, is sharing those practices.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
It can be hard work. I mean, I love that Shauna brought up, you know, I've got this group and I want this group. There's this other group working on other things. And I always tell, one thing we've said in the States, or said to the States, you got to remember that one of the links I shared today was the alignment between ESSA, WIOA, and Perkins. We need to be able to show that we have a lot of cross-connected outcomes that we can all share in and not remain in our silos. So helping your school district understand that this is part of continuous quality improvement as well. CT is not an elective, it is part of it. Career development is part of it.
So Brian, stay right here. I want to give a clue to someone that I'm going to call them out in just a second. So I want them to get ready. But I love the capturing the student and parent voice, and it sounds like you've got something good going on. I'd like to talk with you in a second. So just get ready to come off mute and show your picture. So Brian, one of the things that I'm really encouraged about, and this kind of came up last in our spring convening with the state leaders, and we had Bobby Silverstein on, when he talked about, you know, we have to learn how to talk about this work so that we can be persuasive when we're talking with the policymakers and we're talking with key individuals that are in leadership roles. I know Natalie and Stacy have done obviously a tremendous job because they got the governor fully on board, right? That there's moments when this comes up, and how can we reframe and explain what we're doing within the kind of policy du jour, or the to help them spend the dollars that are in certain ways. But Brian, you've got it, and I'm thinking we need it as a coalition. That might be part of the professional development we do among ourselves, is to think about how we can learn how to have those conversations.
I mean, my first reaction would be that we can't use this as a standalone initiative or a standalone conversation. It has to be part of the thought process in everything we do. So when we're trying to establish new partnerships in our community, it's not just about the graduates of Gateway and are we placing them in the job. It's about developing that talent at the earliest level. So, you know, in our case, it's a kids lab program all the way through a middle school program, all the way through a high school articulated programs. And we already know, you know, where the class of 2040 is, right? They're in our kindergarten. So let's not think too hard about where that talent's coming from. How do we start increasing our capacity for creating that awareness and that engagement? And one of the big challenges, I think, in our schools in general is the parent involvement. And maybe we can resonate some different levels of conversation with that based on economic conditions or, you know, aspirations that they might have for their children. And how do we get them to university in a more affordable pathway? Let's draw that out and see if we can build some capacity for that. I have a simple story when I meet with the junior parents of our local schools. And I say, I'm always excited and encouraged when young people say they want to go to university, and I help encourage that, but do we understand the pathway for it? So most parents save for at least 5 or 6 years for that baccalaureate degree. That's a lot of money, right? What if you went to a 2-year college and cut that cost in half and then added 2 more years and graduated with a baccalaureate degree in 4 years with half the cost? Oh, that makes sense, right? So there are different ways in which we can approach. We can look for the outcome. We can approach the outcome in many different ways. It's not one pathway to success, and people need different options because of the different circumstances that they're.
That's right. Thank you. So, so do we have someone who's willing to come off and talk about the parent and student voice and the listening tours that are going on?
Hi, Scott. This is Karen Keegan.
Hey.
So I wrote that sticky note. Is that what you want me to talk about?
Yeah. What are you doing? This sounds fabulous.
Well, we have been working with someone who is a social designer, human-centered design, and talking about, you know, involving the people when there's a challenge for a group of people, involving them not only just to say, tell us what you think, but involving them in the solution, right? This particular person is doing some amazing work in Manhattan with housing and discrimination. And they included people who were having those issues in the solutions and came up with things that are actually most helpful to that group of people instead of, you know, educators or professionals always doing the decisions. So we feel very strongly that the student voice is missing from a lot of this in our work. So, I mean, this literally just came up. We've tried to get students involved in some of our conversations, and we might get 2 or 3 or a handful of parents, but it's not enough. And we don't want the schools that we're working with in this collaborative that we have to think, well, that's just that student or that's just that group of people. So we, in the last 2 days, honestly, have put together this campaign. So for the next, I say 3 weeks, we have about 6 or 7 sessions set up that we're going to blast statewide to try to get feedback on student and parent experiences with their post-secondary advisement process. What worked, what didn't work, what would they like to see? Because in order for us to move forward and try to fix things, we want to reimagine that system in our state, as you know. And we need to hear from the people who are having the experiences.
That's fantastic.
One parent told us that, you know, she had gotten a lot of information, but all of it sounded like a foreign language. She didn't know what GPA was. She didn't know like all the terms, all the things. And so, yeah, the school says we're giving it to them. We have these meetings, but the students and parents, you know, we all know that there's a disconnect oftentimes. So
it's a lot of information.
Yeah. And so, but we want this, so we're inviting the schools that are part of this collaborative to sit in on these so they hear it directly. We don't want to just do these focus groups and then take it back to school people and say, this is what we want them to hear it. And we're actually using Jamboard, and, you know, this is a really good technique to capture these ideas. But when we did it before, honestly, my heart sunk, you know, watching the Post-it notes go up about asking about college and being told, you know, they're at a VOTEC school, they don't need to go to college, and you can go to Del State and don't think about schools out of state. Like the things that the students were writing. Meanwhile, the school counselors are telling me, I'm in touch with them all the time, and they're telling me we're doing this, we're sharing the information you send us, and, you know, where is this challenge? So we need to bring in that parent and student voice directly.
And throughout. And so one of the great things that happened to us recently in Boston is we were rolling out lessons, and they had this great team of students that were overseeing the new transformative SEL activity that included the career planning. And the students looked at the lessons and gave us their report. And so then the design for the new lessons has their voice. You know, these are the things that we think will be more engaging, more interesting, what we're looking for. It's fantastic. So I think we have to be looking at multiple ways as well. Not only yes, as a needs assessment for sure. And as we go to design programs, they need to also be at the table so that they can help us making sure that we're providing the best resources that we can.
I think the most important thing, though, I just want to say is that their lived experience makes them experts. It's not only the people with the PhDs in the room or 30 years of teaching experience. It's their lived experience, which doesn't usually count for much, and it really needs to.
It does. That's so awesome. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah,
appreciate it. That's great. And then I see this need to address gatekeepers in schools. Certain opportunities are available to certain students. You know, that's a low. Is that yours too?
Sorry. Yeah.
That's awesome, Karen. Because so you and we're just going to talk. It's just you and I. We're just going to hang out for a while. This is okay.
Right. Yeah.
It's good.
We know that happens. We hear that from students all the time, like why they didn't find out about something, but when they go to their community org, then they're learning about the process. They're learning about opportunities, but their person at school didn't tell them, but they told other kids.
I had a great experience with my own daughter with that. And, you know, you talk about experiences and how you hear about them, that, you know, and it isn't always through the counselor, and there's a lot of information to share. So I'm not trying to badmouth counselors. They're handling so much information. It's hard to get out what does that student need at that point in time? Amy Phillips is from Wisconsin's Department of Workforce Development and runs the Youth Apprenticeship Program in the state. And she has an example too, Amy, if you can take yourself off of this, because she was sharing it with me offline about the story. Again, another story where this kid found out about opportunities, but not through regular channels. Amy, are you on?
She's looking for the unmute button.
Aren't we all?
No, I'm not seeing. Amy, no? Well, oops. What I wanted to do was also shift that question or that point you made, Karen, to also make it a larger piece. So we also have ways in which we organize our schools. And last night, our student services director just did a bombshell game changer where he's no longer going to put our students with disabilities in programs. They're going to provide supports, and that's it. We're going to provide supports. We're not going to call them, oh, this is this student or this is this program. It's just what supports does that student need in order to be successful. We're not going to wait 45 days to decide whether or not the student deserves on an IEP. We're going to start intervening right away when you think there's an issue, so we can figure out what best supports are needed to make sure every child learns. So there's one avenue of where there's a gatekeeper. There's a math gatekeeper too, and I know Amy, maybe we'll try to get your unmute thing working in just a second.
I'm working on it.
Okay, great. The other is this child. The other gatekeeper is algebra. It is, and it doesn't matter if they pass algebra. If they can't pass the OccuPlacer, they're not going anywhere, right? So there was a story in Singapore about this young man who couldn't do algebra, and I've got a son right now who struggles with some of the basic math areas and has a similar kind of story emerging. But what he did when he was in the lower schools, in lower post-secondary thing, he's on the lowest rung in Singapore, you have to test out to get up, was he was doing these little cyber things where he was creating graphics and then sending them to a friend, and when his friend would open the graphic, the phone would crash. You know, really fun stuff that they did to each other. And this teacher looked over and said, you know, if you take that graphic and you put it on eBay, you could probably sell it for the money that you need to buy a better computer, which he did. And then the teacher took the kids that are all playing this with each other and says, all right, we have a team, and they started competing around doing all these little hackathons and all these different things, which they won, both in Singapore and in the whole South region, South Asian region. The inability to do math was only one element, but had all of this other talent that brought him eventually up to the top universities. And I think where we have problems, and this is school counselors, because this is how we're taught, right? I do training. They focus on the academic. You can't do math, therefore you can't. You can't do this, you can't do, you don't have the grades, you can't. Our kids are playing Minecraft. Those are engineers. My son has the same story of not being able to do the basic multiplication, but could talk about physics and could talk about engineering a spaceship and sending it to Mars with language I don't even know existed, but it's all part of that physics and geometry and all this other stuff that's way above his grade. In fourth grade, he was testing out as a sophomore in geometry. So there are ways our youth are learning and can learn, and one of the big gatekeepers is our inability to see the potential. And I saw what somebody wrote earlier on one of the chats during one of our sessions, really focusing on talent, not on interests, not on grades. What's the talent that's inside that child? So that was a long speech. Were we able to get Amy back? Is she?
She's having problems with her. It's a setting in her Chrome browser and on her laptop. So
boy.
I hope we can
Amy.
get her to share her story at another time.
Well, if she could sell some of those, newfangled things on eBay, we can get her back on with a better computer. I'm sorry, Amy. We'll try to figure this out. Are some other thoughts? Or anyone want to come off that has a comment based on what they've been hearing? We've got about 15 minutes. And would love to hear some more voices. Thank you, Karen. That was awesome. Really good stuff. We did hear something about school counselors being too busy. That's why it's a team sport. And I will tell you this, for your school counselors who are too busy, one of the most busiest things they have to do in the high school is every fall, they have to sit and do all the reprogramming changes. I have had more than one school counselor come up to me and say, once they started the personalized career and academic plans in fall, they have exactly 0 program changes. because who's driving the ship? The students. They know what they need to take, and they're getting it set up in spring, and they know, and they're invested in that program. So some of this work actually makes it easier down the road as they go along, but totally do understand that they're busy. And that sometimes, and that's what Colorado did, is one of the reasons they're so busy is because the ratios in their schools are too high. And once Colorado started bringing it down, I think they're down to about 340 to 1, but that's not where they started a few years ago. And just getting down to, and that's what we want to study in our condition of career readiness report, is to see, is there a sweet spot in states that have been bringing this ratio down where we can see some increases on some of these other key outcomes. So we think that that's one of the big ones.
Scott, are there any sticky notes from employers or any employer organizations here that have, what would they like to see? Have you seen any? I can't see the sticky note side.
All right.
While he's looking, can I just add a comment? This is Jan. Because I think all the discussion's been fascinating, and we keep focusing on a lot on counselors, and you're right, we have so much there. You know, as I looked, and this isn't just career development, I've heard it from superintendents and from other schools. If the person, and we heard it from Brian actually, if the person who's in the leadership at the top, the principal of the school, the president of the career college, whatever it is, doesn't support it and believe in it, you know, people pay attention and focus on what they're being held accountable for. But at the end of the day, that's really, in my mind, it's as simple as that, what they do. So if they're not held accountable for the career development, the success of an individual, of a student. I mean, let's face it, a student graduates high school, and how much does the high school follow and really care? Have they gone anything, even what's in their plan? Has it followed along, and what kind of advisement? I met a principal of a school. It was a failing school. Now, this isn't about career development, it's the process. And he determined that the failing school was literacy. And, you know, everybody was illiterate, the students by and large. That was a problem. He made it part of the system that every counselor, every teacher, every support person was held responsible for literacy. Integrated into their curriculum, into what they did with the students. Their in-service was around it. That's how they were evaluated. In 2 years' time, the scores, and this again is reading scores, but came up significantly, and he was awarded teacher or principal of the year by the national organization. But I think the question becomes, how do we engage more people like Brian as well? Yes, industry has to be at the table, but if we don't have, whether it's a state superintendent, a principal of school, president of a community college, behind it and understanding it, it doesn't get to the point where it needs to. And so the question is, how do we create more Brian Albrechts? I've said that on a number of occasions, but yeah. So that to me is a big issue.
No, that's a good one. And what I want to do is just pivot a little bit, Jan, because I agree that that's an important part. I'm going to ask, I'm a little nervous to ask this, but Sam Bottom, are you available? Can you come off mute and talk for a second? I've got a couple questions and thoughts.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we hear a lot is, and I think you would agree, is the need to make sure that we're graduating students with skills that align to the workforce needs of the region, right? I mean, am I on target? Am I understanding that as a key piece?
Yep, absolutely.
So what I'm thinking, let me tell you what I've heard. I've heard that when employers see and listen to students talk about their personalized career and academic plan, they no longer say that. That when they actually listen to you talk about what they've learned, what they're planning to do with what they have and the different pathways, that they see the school as in a completely different way. And so that's what I'm wondering is how can we help business become more connected, I guess, to that kind of story development? I mean, we can have the schools create these things, and we've seen it happen where they open the gym up and they have the seniors, interviewing with business. But it just seems like this is a way that sells education and what we're really doing, as opposed to waiting each year and looking at test scores, right? This is a different way of seeing what's happening inside the school. But I just wanted to get your thought about that.
No, yeah, there's a lot that you're speaking to there. I'll just pick up one strain of it, which is, you use the word selling. And I think that's part of our challenge, right? We have a selling and marketing challenge as far as exposing kids to the broader set of career pathways and career options. And we have a broader societal issue has been talked about throughout the whole conference around it not just being about going to a four-year college or other, but in fact talking about all the different pathways and how those pathways could still lead to, you know, the Mark's example of the welder. You may start off with a two-year education and then decide you want to get further education from there. So one pathway does not preclude the other. And so I think to your question, it's about marketing and selling the appeal and the possibilities, and that it's not an exclusive either or choice, but in fact, right, a process that we all build on. I think most of us would admit in hindsight that at least this is true for me, I think it's true for many people, our careers are perhaps not as linear and straightforward as we sometimes describe, or others may describe them, right? A lot more ping-ponging and bouncing around, and there's always themes and connections with the choices we've made. But I think we do a lot of kids and other adults a disservice by not being sort of more open and transparent about that.
No, thank you, Sam. And that is why we need them to have multiple pathways. I'm using the word on-ramps, that seeing the different on-ramps, as Brian was saying, kind of like a lifelong learner is I'm seeing how my opportunities open up and what can I do to expand future opportunities. But the thing I wanted to go back to, Sam, in this is this idea of the two-way street that I know, bringing up Sheboygan again, but this is where it happened. It's happened also up in northern Wisconsin too. But the employers got so excited about how the school was wanting to advance, and it was advanced manufacturing, how they wanted to make that a core component of the curriculum. And they let the business community help design that curriculum, that they went and raised $4.5 million to build the building and put the manufacturing in the school. That to me, is business believing in schools as connecting the dots between what we need and what you're willing to do, right? So to me, it's not a waiting game. It's a how do we create the relational dynamic with the school and the community needs, so that we can get on the same page with what we're striving to do. And I think that this is where, again, the personalized career and academic plan comes out, because we can use students who've had that experience and found those alternate pathways to become our spokespeople, like this young woman did in Sheboygan when she became the nurse. She became their health pathways spokesperson. She developed all these leadership skills, talking to business about what we're doing and how we're making it work. So, but I'll pause there. I see you nodding, so I'm hoping I got a good line.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Scott, and I think we need people who can serve as bridges and translators, if you will, between sectors, because I think so often, right, if you're in the business sector, nonprofit and government, they're black boxes. And if you're in government, the other two sectors are black boxes. And if you're in education or nonprofit, you think the other two are black boxes, right? And so the more people we have that can serve as those connectors, and I think Brian Albrecht, who's on here, is a great example of that. I think he has served as a very strong connector for us, both locally, and I do have to admit, I live on the Illinois side, so I cross the channel every day.
Wow.
But I've become a fan of Wisconsin, to be sure. But I just had to get that out. But the reality is, Brian has really shown us pathways, and together through dialogue, as he's better understood where we're coming from, we've built a very strong partnership in Southeast Wisconsin. But more importantly, I think nationally, we've helped advance some different models and some different causes. And we've only done that effectively because we've been working with Brian and others like Roger Tedeschi and Jan Bray and Leo Reddy and many others who serve as those translators, as those bridge builders. And we only get, to your point, Scott, more and more engaged as we better understand how we might effectively work together. But right, you have to come to the table somewhat humble and willing to know that you don't have all the answers. If that makes sense.
Scott, this is Leo. I want to add a couple of points to what my friend Sam just mentioned, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
First of all, I'm certainly a member of the Brian Alberg fan club, and also love Snap-on and all the great things they do there. But I just wanted to add a couple of specific points. If you recall, kind of the paradigm for career pathway that defines the work we've been doing so far in the coalition, I think we've identified two very specific activities that would do a great deal to make sure that the interest of the economy and the interest of the students are much more closely stitched together. The misalignment between what the economy needs and what education is offering has always been the elephant in the room. It still is the elephant in the room, but two measures that I think would make a huge difference that we've already put on the table. Number one, that all students would have some kind of a high quality industry certification in their chosen career pathway. Start beginning in high school, at least beginning to work on that in high school. And the report of our core committee identified leading industry certification bodies in every single one of the industry sectors of the country. This isn't just manufacturing, but we identified 53 other certification bodies to cover all 20 sectors of the economy. We use 20 in NAICS, you could use 17, but anyway, all industry sectors. That's very important. So one way to make sure these students already have it disposed to industry is to secure one of those credentials or partially. The second one, even more valuable, is the summer internship program. So that in their junior and senior years, all students would actually work in a firm, an organization in their area of interest. What better way to actually get to meet people for those companies to get to meet you and to begin to really secure a much closer connection with your employer. I think those two very, very, very practical measures that we should keep in mind. I just want to mention that.
Thank you, Leo. And I totally agree with you. And yet, even if we do that, because it is happening, there's a lot of places, Kansas is a great example, it's happening. But if we don't have a process to help employers become aware of the fact that the skills they're coming out with are the skills they're asking for, then we have issues. And I think it's only through more engagement with the employment community directly with our youth to really showcase that is one of the things that I think we need to do, and also helping youth learn how to communicate about it. Sam, we've only got a couple minutes. I just want to thank you both for your leadership and engagement, but it's so great to have industry voice in this conversation. And I know you're having to sit with a bunch of state educators as we're kind of going through the different thoughts, but I want that also because then you can kind of hear where they're at on it. But we also got to anchor it back in where's industry and how can we learn how to communicate better. I won't have time today, but I want to another shout out to Castle. They've done a nice job of looking at those employer skills and then putting them in the frame of social emotional learning, or what we're calling the human skills. You heard Oren talk about that, these deeper human SEL skills. And it's a way that when we can help our youth identify how they have those skills, but more importantly, how to communicate in a job interview that they have these skills, right? And that's where it comes to it, is can they help you as an employer understand that, yep, these are the skills I've developed that you've been asking for in a way, in a way that they're assertive and have a brand that connects with your business. So we have a lot of work to do on all those elements. And Leo's point is well taken. We got to continue to build their capacity, but there's a lot more. But Sam, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and being part of this. Great.
Thank you. No, I appreciate being able to learn from everybody. And I am a recovering ex-government official and educator. So perhaps that's why I enjoy this so much.
All right, that's great. And I'm glad you brought Mark Perna's comments up yesterday. Mark, that was really a great, it's a testimonial that it's not just thinking about alternative pathways, it's coming up with alternative pathways to those 4-year degrees where you've got employers investing in you in new ways. And that whole thought, I don't think people have really understood that we can start figuring out which companies will invest in you if you invest in them. And so I think it was a really good case example, and I want to thank you for that. It's a good one to keep in mind. We are right at the 4:29 mark, aren't we?
Right. So we just have one more slide, because one of the early issues we're finding as we try to capture, as Leo said, who's earning industry recognized certifications, who's doing this work-based learning, is sometimes getting that data is very problematic. So we thought we'd put this slide out there to see if you could help us answer this. basically, which one of the following data points does your state even collect for all students? Mind you, this is now being required under Perkins 5 for CTE concentrator students. But if you don't fall in that definition, is your state still going to collect it in its state data system? And it's really interesting to find it's all across the board. So we'd love to hear some responses. If you don't know, we get it. But if you're a state recognized or work at the state level, you know some of these, it can be real challenging. So we'd love to have you click on that. And I'm going to give it like another minute, and then we'll stop sharing and hand it back over to Jan. Scott, did you have any final words?
Well, thank you, everyone. This was fabulous. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I can't wait to look through all those Post-its, and we will be getting those summarized so we can get that directly into our thoughts as we're writing our report and doing the data analysis. Looking forward to fall and connecting, and also looking forward to next year when we release this first report, and hope that it's something that you can all feel is supporting your needs as we go forward. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And Jan, we'll give it back to you.
We will. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott and Robin. That was really, I love the interaction. I mean, the way you guys planned the interaction was phenomenal. And I think it was a great discussion.